really important thing to me is not chasing the light values too soon. So as I talked about in the underpainting, there's these, especially when we get to the lights, there's going to be these really light areas of this fur that just scream paint me, and it's hard to look past that and paint the areas underneath first. So the same thing happens now when we get to this phase. We're in the mindset of, well, gosh, I've already got my darks down, so now it's time to put lights in, right? But what we cannot forget is before lights come midtones, right? So if I'm really going to make this look like it's got volume, I've got to resist that urge to paint my lightest lights that I still see right there. They're still standing out, and go with more of a mid-tone base, while at the same time being very careful not to completely cover up my underpainting. You see, I'm leaving spaces of the underpainting kind of showing through. If I cover them all up, it would have been pointless to do an underpainting. This brush here is actually doing a really good job, so I don't feel like I need to switch to that other one yet.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
How much pressure are you applying in those strokes? It looks like you're using really light pressure.
Yeah, it's 0.27 pounds. I'm just kidding. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the benefits I think of holding the brush at the end here is I can literally feel the bristle touch through the brush, and that's one of the benefits I think is I'm up here. You can feel it too, but I don't have as much control. I don't feel like over the, over I guess how I can fluctuate my pressure. So as soon as I feel that touch, it's barely just letting the tip of the brush hit the surface of the canvas or the board. The idea of painting is not to let those bristles bend like this, but just to let the paint come out, right? And if I put too much pressure on it, just squishes everything. And also it blends color when we do that. So the idea is to layer what's in the brush on top of what's already there, even wet into wet, right? I think it was David LaFell, one of his books. And he's been a great inspiration to me as I was learning to paint. He's got a couple of great books out. Matter of fact, on that line too, one of the bonus areas of this video I'm going to do at the end is go through some of the books that have influenced me, and I think my top 10 books I brought with me. So we're going to go through and kind of talk about those and I think I have David LaFell's book with me. But one of the things that he had mentioned is that the bristle should never touch, when he paints, the bristle should never touch the canvas, just paint, right? And so the paint comes off and then you reload. The paint comes off and reload. That's the idea. Now, he paints a lot more impasto or thicker with his technique than I do. So I can actually let the bristle touch, but the idea is still the same, and I want to reload very frequently and not try, because as I start, another friend of mine calls this licking it to death. If I start trying to get too much out of one load, all I'm really doing is picking up paint and transferring, right? And that's where we get mud. That's where we get frustrated in painting, especially in something like this where you're trying to create these layers. In some areas are wet into wet, so it becomes very frustrating. So you can see that I'm not mixing up thick paint here. Again, for this particular layer, that's very intentional. I know this would drive some more, I guess, what we call direct method painters, maybe a little crazy, painting like this where they build up thicker paint. But direct method meaning that more alla prima, one sitting, wet into wet paintings, right? Which require thick paint as you get lighter to cover up what's wet underneath. Indirect method, I can go thin layer into thin layer into thin layer and build up multiple layers over days. So that's what I'm doing here is an indirect method. So I don't have to go as thick. I don't have to, and especially like I had mentioned on this first layer, it's intentionally not meant to be thick. I'm simply mapping out. I'm going to get much thicker in this paint as we build the layers up. Each layer gets thicker paint. So part of my process.